Administrator Kindred, would you do the roll call, please?
Mayor Rogers.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Lino.
Here.
Trustee Hunt.
Here.
Trustee Rhoda.
Here.
Trustee Tori. Attorney Rico.
Here.
Deputy Treasurer Lee.
Here.
DPW Richie Stone.
Here.
Okay, we have no proclamations this evening. We'll move into the approval of minutes. I'll make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes from September 12th of 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we have two public hearings scheduled for this evening. So at this time, I'll make a motion to open the first public hearing, which is on amendments for technical changes to Chapter 47 HPC of the Village Code and continued from 9/12/22.
We don't have to reopen it. I don't think it's still open, correct? Motion. to
Well, I'm
continue.
going to call a motion to continue for people to come up to the podium, yeah.
Well, that's what I meant.
Well, it's,
Just looking
yeah,
it up.
I mean, it's
We need
continued.
to start it, so reopening is fine. We didn't need to renote it.
So does that need a second?
Yes.
Okay, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so if you're here this evening and you'd like to comment on Chapter 47 changes, we ask that you come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Tom?
Good evening, board members. My name is Thomas Frank. I reside at 5403 Main Street. And I'd like to welcome you to the wonderful, walkable downtown village of Williamsville.
Excuse me, could somebody time, is somebody, could you time count? Thanks.
And I'd like to comment on the Ellicott Creek, the rainwater shed, the floodplain, is the it's the historically, it's the nature-based historic foundation for the historic development of the village of Williamsville in the town of Amherst. And that my comments are to on the amendments for the technical changes to chapter 47 of the HPC Village Code, including that it should include the village of Williamsville and the town of Amherst, LWRP, the local waterfront drafts, the village draft, which I don't think the state has approved it yet, or
It's on tonight's agenda. for
Pardon me?
approval. It's on tonight's agenda for
Oh.
approval.
oh, good. That the, as far as the natural historic preservation priority should be an aspect of that, of the village code. The long-term infrastructure maintenance of the village water lines, the sewer lines, and the highway storm sewer lines should have a horizon that looks like 2057. And that's consistent with the relicensing of the Niagara Power Project as far as their settlement to indemnify the cumulative negative impact of the generation on the watershed. And Ellicott Creek is part of the watershed. The United States Vice President Kamala Harris spoke at the UB Amherst campus on September 14th about the Inflation Reduction Act climate and healthcare bill that was signed by the president. That is connected as far as the climate. Main Street is, as far as the walkable village, it's a traffic sewer. And that the long-term plans for the historic preservation that would include, as far as the LWRPs for the village of Williamsville and the town of Amherst, that it will include the new certified climate communities participation of the village and the town in the Amherst Central Park Greenway, which is for the watershed floodplain. And I've also received an email of interest from the Governor, Kathy Hochul, regarding the New York Parks and Trails as far as the public policy. That this is, the Amherst Central Park is a part of that. And
Tom, could you wrap up your comments?
okay, I'd like to finish by saying that the past, present, and future preservation of the nature-based history of the Ellicott Creek watershed and floodplain should be considered in that in the code. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to comment on chapter 47?
Good evening, my name is Kate Waterman Culpa, I live at 81 Milton Street. I request that the public hearings for chapter 47 remain open until the Historic Preservation Commission has had a chance to submit comments. Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to comment on chapter 47? No? Okay, is the board open to leaving it open?
Yeah, initially Chip gave the first rendition, they did not get the second rendition, and it's on their agenda. to
Yeah,
look
they
at
have.
tomorrow.
They'll, yeah. they'll
Okay, sure.
Change that to do with the filling things. Yes.
All right.
Keep it open.
Okay, let's keep it open then till our next
And we also
meeting.
though haven't, even though I did say, they haven't had a chance, they haven't met since I sent them even the first version. So they
That's
haven't
fine.
had a chance to collectively discuss it.
Okay. All right, then we will, I will continue this at our next board meeting, which is October, is it 11th? October 11th. So we'll continue this public hearing.
Is it the 11th or the 12th?
It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday, so
I think that's the 11th.
Oh.
Okay, so we'll continue that. All right.
Meeting is,
Yep.
to
Second.
continue.
Yeah, to
Second.
continue. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the next public hearing, I will open that, and this public hearing is regarding amendments for technical changes to chapter 112 zoning of the village code, and it is also continued from 9/12/22. Did I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So at this time, if you'd like to comment on the changes for chapter 112, we ask that you come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
So again, Kate Waterman Culpa, 81 Milton Street. I spoke with Chair Alexander this afternoon of the Williamsville Planning and Architectural Review Board, and she was not notified that there were to be technical changes to the zoning code. And on her behalf, as well as a member of the planning board, I'm requesting that the public comment period remain open until planning board members have had a chance to comment. Thank you.
And who is liaison to zoning board? Mary, I know you're liaison.
Planning board.
I'm
Yes,
at,
planning board.
planning board, yes.
Planning, but we didn't meet this month.
Yeah, they hadn't.
Since August.
They haven't met since
So it
last
wasn't
year. I
something.
can send them.
Yeah, why don't you send it over to planning? Okay,
We'll meet next week.
okay. Yeah, does anyone on the board have a problem keeping that open? Anyone on the board have a problem? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on chapter 112? Okay, seeing none, I will,
I have a question on that.
Sure.
I think somewhere in here we should have maximum heights, especially for walls and fences.
We do.
we do.
Okay, where did I miss it?
Well, it's not in there
It's
because
not
it's
in
already
here.
in there.
Okay, okay. I thought it had to be
Yeah,
repeated.
again, these were not intended to make substantive changes to
Okay.
any. These were
This is,
really had to do with procedural and jurisdictional issues.
Okay, the other question I had was on the top of the third page where we talk about the alternates for the Planning and Architectural Review Board.
Mhm.
Can we somehow have the alternates alternate versus one person being chosen consistently?
We probably could. My only concern about that, I mean, in other words, I don't think there'd be anything impermissible about that legally. My only concern about it is that assumes both alternates are gonna regularly be available. I mean, you don't wanna put yourself in a situation where you can't see.
I don't know what the attendance is like on the planning board, so you're usually there, Chip.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually pretty good, but we definitely have, the planning board over the past several years has regularly sat alternates, regularly. So my only concern, as long as we put some wiggle room in there that says you don't have to alternate, like if the other alternate is not there.
Right, I mean, if there's not anyone there, but it just seems like, people had told me that there were consistently one alternate was used when there were two alternates in attendance. So I'd like to just see that we have two alternates for a reason, because we have two alternates, so I'd like to see them all used.
Yeah, so again, I don't see any reason that could not be written in here. I think it also might be able to be dealt with as a sort of a policy approach by the planning board, but so we could put something in there. I just would want to make sure it doesn't, I also wouldn't want to create a situation where they can't see.
Okay.
So, a full board, because that alternate was the one who was seated at the previous meeting. I just wouldn't want it to say that alternate can't sit for 2 straight meetings if that's the
Right,
only way
I
to
don't
get a
think
full board.
anybody should preclude.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, thank you.
okay, and I'm sorry, did we close out that public hearing with a second?
To
Continue it.
Second.
We did not.
Okay, so we will be continuing it at our next meeting, which is October 11th, and that is a Tuesday. So do I have a second?
Yes, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we will now move into suspension of rules for public participation. This is the time where you have an opportunity to come and address the board on any issue as it pertains to the Village of Williamsville. And we ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes if possible. And at this point, I'll make a motion to open the floor for the suspension of rules for public participation.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So at this time, if you'd like to come up to the podium, we just ask that you state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Nick Ross, 135 Oak Grove. I was a little surprised sitting in at the work session that there was really no comments on the letter that you all received from former trustee E2. As you know, the HPC is a very hot topic in the village these days. There was an editorial published in last week's edition of the Bee, stating that perhaps it's time to step back and reevaluate things tremendously. And also, I know from hearing a lot of people talk and things like that, there's a general air of suspicion and distrust about the HPC. A lot of things seem to be shrouded in mystery and have to happen very quickly. I was pleased to hear during work session about the potential changes of video conferencing, and if all committee members could meetings be made available through video conferencing or Zoom or whatever for the public. I think a lot of people engaged during the pandemic, knowing that they could see things without coming here. But I think that in former trustee A2's letter, his subparagraph number 9, he's referencing section 47-12 of the code, stating it further requires that the commission to compile a public record in support of its designation. And then he goes on to say that he thinks, or he suspects rather, I would hazard to guess that the HPC would not receive much in the way of supportive public comments, and goes on, et cetera, et cetera. I think you all know what I'm talking about. Mayor Rogers, I support your nomination of an individual who I do not know. I think there needs to be better diversity on that board. Currently, it seems like a lot of these trustees are handpicked and curated to meet a specific agenda. And again, I don't know. I've not done a sampling. I've not not done any polling. I've yet to meet anybody who thinks that the HPC does good work in the village. Certainly, historic preservation to an extent is very helpful. 2 editions ago, I had a letter to the editor published in the Bee on this topic, and I cited that there's a growing body of study that a lot of times, especially in smaller communities, items of minor historical significance gets tagged, and it's not always in the public interest. And also somewhere in code for HBC, they talk about the economy of the village, and the committee should not be a detriment to business, as a lot of people feel that possibly it is. So I think it's time. I don't know how it works. I know there's state laws involved in this, but if the committee could possibly be on hiatus for 6 months or so until some of these underlying issues get resolved. I don't know what the solution is, but it definitely needs to be looked into. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Evening. I'm Eric O'Neill, 79 Oak Grove Drive.
Speak up, please.
Said I'm Eric O'Neill, 79 Oak Grove Drive. I'm also want to talk about the HPC. I think it's important that we step back for a second and look at what's happened to New York State over the last several decades. In the last year and a half alone, we've lost 380,000 population. All you have to do is drive across the state from here to Amsterdam to Binghamton and Cattaraugus, everywhere across the state, and you can see that we're a shell of our former self. And a lot of that is not due to bad luck. It's due to heavy-handed government and the policies that government hands down, which is bad for business and job creation. And when it comes to the HBC, I find it very problematic that an entity like this commission that is not directly accountable, but is appointed, not directly accountable to the taxpayer and the voter, can have such an influence on businesses in this community. And I think we need to humble ourselves a little bit and realize the government has done a bad job over the last 50 years here. And part of that is heavy-handed approach. I think it's something like the HBC. There has to be, yes, it is very important to preserve our historical heritage, but it's also important that is combined with pragmatism and common sense and balance, so that we think about economic growth in the community. And without economic growth, there's no money. And without money, a lot of the nice things we like and enjoy in these communities, we don't have them. All you have to do is look at other smaller communities across the state and realize that that's the truth. So I'd just like you to consider that. And I agree with Nick that somehow this organization needs to be more accountable to the community, particularly the taxpayers it affects. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
The Meyer family on Willowbrook. I just have 2 comments. First of all, I want to thank the mayor for stopping the work on the dam, and wanted to sort of to get an update from Dan when he got a chance. Because bottom line, today is a prime example of what happens. We had a lot of rain. We're going to have a lot of rain the next few days. We have no fear of flooding because the dam is open. Okay? And the businesses are doing great. We all know that. And I would just like to go on record to say that I'm still hurt and upset by the emergency meeting that you guys called on the busiest day of what's it called, Old Homes Week. And you wouldn't let anybody talk, because now we know, after investigation, that the smell came from the town of Amherst releasing the air conditioning fluid into Ellicott Creek, which I wonder why we're doing that. And secondarily, that smell was fixed by elongating the pipe and having that chemical flow into the water that's moving. So I'm not sure you were being honest about that. So that's hurtful. But I thank you, Mayor, because we're not fearful of a flood right now. And I really would ask the board to reconsider the direction that the new board's taking as opposed to the old board, because I really think the money would be better spent in re-engineering the west channel, which was the original creek, fixing the man-made one, and repositioning the creek so it's the beautiful jewel that it was when we all grew up. Secondarily, I agree with all the speakers about HPC. There is no accountability when you're not elected. That's not fair to the residents. I agree with Nick, maybe put it on hold for a while, but and to me, hasty decisions cause a lot of problems. That's what you did with the dam when you had the emergency meeting, and that's what HPC is doing right now. So we should learn a lesson and service the community, not the board. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Deputy Mayor Delaney, do you want to give do you have a dam update or no?
We're waiting on the DOC approval, the DEC approval, correct, Ben?
That's
The drawings.
last I heard, yeah.
Yeah. And that's all we know. at this
Okay.
point.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Yaquin Hu. I live off of Park Club Lane. It looked like I'm probably the only person here who's under 30 who doesn't work here, so I just want to excuse any noviceness I might have with respect to contribution. I have a lot of friends my age who go to the Latter-day Saints Church and also Northgate Church, so I really recognize that I'm trying to kind of like lead more involvement in the government rather than just like laying around in the park and smoking weed or whatever. So even if my contribution isn't of the highest quality, I hope you'll kind of just give me feedback. What I would like to talk about is the topic of religious tolerance in the town of Williamsville in general. I noticed that there are several religious buildings that are covered under the HBC's jurisdiction. And I just want to point out that there are certain religious beliefs that if you have them, it dramatically changes your value system as well as your behavior, and that most of American society is kind of based on a loose understanding of like contemporary Protestantism, and the idea that, for example, the interpretation of Revelations that death is inevitable and that Jesus will come back and resurrect everyone and that you'll have eternal life. I actually do believe, as someone who spends quite a lot of time on philosophy as a author of a chess textbook, which is incidentally related to the fact that I'm unemployed, that that belief actually has a very significant impact on our prioritization and our decisions. For example, if we did honestly believe that that is not inevitable and that it is a problem that can be solved, which about half of our population does seem to take that position. Anyone who's working in academic science, who's working in hospitals, they're not really praying to Jesus, so to speak. I'm saying this as a Christian, and just hoping that God's going to save it when they're actually working on actual solutions. And every time someone does die, they're looking at, hey, why exactly did they die? And at this point, they can pretty much attribute any sort of death to a disease. And every single disease that kills people, except very rare ones, have funding that's going into research into curing them. But I don't think anyone in any of these two groups takes the position that death in itself is actually completely curable and that it is possible to live forever insofar as the earth can also exist forever, and that also depends on an interpretation of Revelations, whether you believe that the descent of the earth with Christ coming as a transformation of the existing earth or if it's a complete replacement. I've had this conversation with a number of religious leaders in the area, and there seems to be no consensus to the great detriment of the American public. And as a result, I feel the need to weigh in. I understand that I'm almost at 3 minutes, but I could take 30 seconds to kind of explain my view. So hopefully I can just go about 30 seconds. As a chess player and a chess author, I am trained to look at every situation in life as a problem. And as a computer scientist, by proxy of being a chess player, insofar as chess players have contributed quite a bit to computer science, I know that every problem can be quantified in terms of their complexity. when software engineers develop new websites, they always do something called a Scrum planning meeting so that they know exactly how long it's going to take. Today, NASA landed a DART rover on an asteroid, and they knew exactly the time that it was going to hit the asteroid, right? So we actually do have a system within engineering to quantify the complexity of problems. The problem is that there is no multidisciplinary education, and people who are in medicine don't have that training. So when they're actually working, and engineers also know that you can't work on problems without estimating the time first, right? And nobody in medicine, because they don't have this training, which honestly could be given even a week, save a lot of lives, nobody can give an estimate on how long it's going to take to cure cancer. But if you just insert one software engineer there and have them learn all those medical vocabulary terms, probably within a week they can come up with, okay, this is, based on what we know, this is the complexity of curing generally.
Can you wrap up your statement?
Yeah, I'm just saying that my initial assessment, based on applying information theory to medicine, is that in general, human death has a quantified complexity of solution. It's not theoretically impossible. Telomeres can even be regenerated. That solves at least, a significant part of it. The aquarium has this thing called the immortal jellyfish that you should look into. And if all of this were accepted, then I think that, our priorities in governance would change dramatically. That's all I'd say.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thomas Frank, 5403 Main Street. I just wanted to comment that the points that I brought out regarding historic preservation, chapter 47, that it should be included in the, as far as the zoning code, the technical amendments, as far as the LWRPs, the local waterfront revitalization plans, that the past, present, and future preservation of the nature-based history of the Ellicott Creek watershed floodplain. That's the basis of the development of both the village and the town, but also it has historical significance that's connected to the Erie Canal National Heritage Corridor with the Department of the Interior and the National Park Service. Thank you. As far as the dam over here.
Thank you.
And the natural course of the creek. And floodplain, as far as the houses that are affected, that had to purchase the flood insurance because it wouldn't be covered if there was a disaster. It wouldn't be covered under the FEMA's provisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I go now?
Sure, you're next.
Paul Kreider, 29 South Ellicott Street. I live across the street from Garrison Park, and in March of this year, 2022, I made a PowerPoint presentation to this board about the condition of the gazebo. Rotting roof, needs new shingles and so forth. Haven't heard anything. I see Dennis here. Maybe can we have some information about estimates of re-roofing, when it would be done? Or
Sure, yeah.
what does the board think the condition of the gazebo is?
And do you want to answer
Are we
that?
giving reports now, or is this public comment?
No, like just, I think he's done with his comment. Mr. Kreider, are you done with your comment, or did you?
It looked like a lot of cobwebs on the roof. I didn't notice any distinct leaking at the time, and nor did any of the contractors that I had over there, albeit the shingles should be replaced. Before my extended hiatus, I did not get any return calls from the roofers that I contacted, and that's where it is right now. You can proceed with that and have it ready for budget time in the spring.
Yeah.
It's not an imminent life health safety threat at the moment. But we are looking at it as part of the continuing maintenance of that building.
So that would be the update.
I haven't forgotten, Dr. Paul.
Yeah.
All right, so how do we put the remodeling or re-roofing into a budget?
Yeah, so we have an annual budget meeting in February where this board will sit down and decide what projects we're going to fund for the following fiscal year. So we will at that time look at the parks budget, and this board would need to agree a majority of it that they think that that is a worthwhile project. And then we would look to most likely, hopefully get that done within the next year.
Can we be sure that a estimate or an appraisal of the condition of it is done, and then an appraisal of the cost is done by February? So that then you have the proper information.
Yeah,
before-
and I think we probably have some of that information.
I have no dollar numbers on that
Yeah,
building,
I-
but we'll
it's been
go
going
back
on
and
for-
bird dog the roofing contractors again to
Mhm.
find out if what they want to charge us to do the roof.
Mhm.
And then we'll have that prepared. And I don't know, if the parks have to get involved, or if just the board wants to make that decision on the structure and go from there.
Yeah.
Right, it's a budget issue, just get the estimate.
Yeah.
And we'll take, take it from there.
Yep.
Can, it's gotta be let up a little bit at this point, right?
Yeah, I would suspect that, and I've heard quite a bit in the industry that it is starting to look, that the tunnel, there's a light at the end of the tunnel
Okay,
as far as supply chain issues and guys catching up with work that they missed on during
right.
the mass time of our lives.
Good evening, Dan Ryder, 38 Garden Parkway. Sorry I couldn't make the work session meeting tonight where I believe you took up the rezoning of South Lawn Park.
Is a discussion point, yes.
Does that include 94 South Lawn?
No,
No.
it just includes South Lawn Park, the park area, where like,
96,
which would,
is there a 94?
are you talking about this former, where the
The
zombie
zombie-
house
the
used to be?
Yeah,
No.
96, 96.
No,
yeah.
no.
92?
No, we weren't talking about that. We were just talking about the actual park, the recreational park at South Lawn, where the baseball diamond is, or used to be.
Well, you've got the train station, you've got the bike path, you've got the park,
Mhm.
you got 92 or 94, whatever it is, South Lawn, the zombie house lot.
Mhm.
They're all right next to each other.
Well, the issue of changing the zoning at South Lawn Park was brought up by a park committee member. And their concern was just the existing lot line of the yellow brick building that is now owned by Uniland. And just kind of saving the park, so whatever is built or could be built in that area potentially isn't just, towering right at the existing lot line. So it was to create a buffer, I guess, is the
So
way
there'll
of.
be more action on it next month?
Well, we left it where, we were gonna look and see exactly what that 20-foot setback was going to look like on all areas. So we're gonna have our code enforcement officer kind of map that out for us. And then we'll
Why don't you have
discuss
to
it further.
Why don't you have to take a look at the zombie lot too? It's all part of the same piece of property. It's all owned by the village. There are several issues on South Lawn. The perennial in what I call the burial vaults,
Mhm.
curved gardens,
Mhm.
for flood control. Well, floods there 42 years. There are 3-foot-high weeds in there now. It started out, first couple of years, they were nice, short perennials, looked pretty good. I still look out my window at the International Shipping and walk by them twice a day. Now they're dangerous. The kid comes out on a little bicycle or running, run right out in front of you. Never see him coming because the weeds are so high. You would write up people if they left their grass that long. Your code enforcement officer would be out there writing them up. So write the village up. Okay, Exura Spa and Salon is in some kind of a zone where they think they ought to get some property tax relief. I'm curious, did Asher Crossing get that? Enhancement zone, is Asher Crossing?
No, Asher Crossing is not.
How about that wreck on?
Are you referring to the Amherst IDA?
Yes.
Yeah, no, Asher Crossing wasn't involved in, the IDA wasn't involved with that project. But I did get notification today that there is a public hearing, which is posted on the bulletin board, regarding Amherst IDA and the former Milos building, which is,
Well, you'll also find that next door because I put it on there. Now, I am a fan of not charging sales tax on building materials. Okay, and I know a lot about the subject.
Mhm.
Because of my background. But I am not a fan of cutting real estate taxes for a profit-making operation. Okay, so I will be there at the
public
IDA
hearing.
meeting speaking against that. Okay, I think you should look at the concrete on your handball wall. I wrote you previously about the
You did.
100% patches.
Mhm.
They're starting to stall and blow out. I look for them. And it hasn't gone through a winter yet. So I would hope you put some funds away for
Mhm.
future repair or replacement. Because I think it's coming.
We have a warranty on it.
Good.
Okay.
So, the apartment, so-called apartment house on South Lawn, just south of Main Street. There's been no action there for a couple of years.
Mhm.
I went over there today, I didn't see anything unsafe about the operation, the way it's secured.
Mhm.
But is the village powerless in having that wreck sitting there?
No, we're not.
So this was discussed at the last meeting. The code enforcement officer needs to make a recommendation to the village board. To either issue an order to complete construction or demolish it.
Mhm.
And I don't.
Which we
believe
should
that-
see at the October meeting. So that's the way that it works. So I spoke with our code enforcement officer and he's gonna put together a report, he'll submit it to this board. And then this board needs to take a vote on what that is going to be, that course of action. So he would either he would have to start work on it or have it demolished, right? Was
Yeah,
one or
if
the
he
other.
doesn't, is subject to a fine of $250 a day.
Yeah,
So that action, the report will come out in October.
yes, I hope to have that report at this board in October.
Good, good.
So,
All right, well, we'll look for it.
Yeah.
Figured.
okay. Mhm.
Joe Stelter, 23 Vinewood. I really have no skin in the game here, other than the fact that I'm a lifelong town of Amherst resident, taxpayer in the village for over 10 years. But, I always talk about abolishing the HPC. I just think, if anything, we need a good system of checks and balances, and that's the way I would look at it. So I would see where you welcome the work they're doing. If anyone's ever been to Oakville, Canada, just north of the border, it's a quaint little village. And I could be wrong about this, but everybody in the village there, or the town, has to have a wooden door. You can't put on like plastic and screen doors and all that. And it has to be approved, and it's just really quaint and beautiful. And most of those homes go for over $1 million. So for people saying that the HPC is against business, I could almost see that the argument the opposite, where restoring the historical beauty of the village could actually add to business and real estate values and whatnot. So, and somebody made a comment at the last meeting about when you drive into the village, you see that sign that says "Welcome to the Village of Windsor," historic, whatever. So, it just kind of goes against everything that this village is based on, to come up here and say, let's abolish the HPC. And I don't have any skin in it, like I said. In fact, Dan, when he first became involved, right, your thing was to save the village, right? And I, quite honestly, I thought that was a crazy idea. I'm like, why should we have duplication of services and whatever? But, now that, how many years has that been now? 10, 12, 13 years or so? And,
2011,
Yeah.
2010.
yeah, I mean, I don't like to pay surcharges on my water bill, but, you win some, you lose some. Two things I want to point out though, that, and I don't know if anyone else is going to comment on it tonight, but the Share building, you know, I go for walks at night and I look at that building and they're talking about that they want to make these improvements on the building, and the building really is kind of in disrepair the way it is. If you look upstairs, the thing needs to be painted, the windows are shot. Ben, the tree that's encroaching on that building, is that the state or is that the village that would trim the trees?
Yeah, that would be us.
Yeah, I mean, you can't even see the building anymore. So all those trees are touching the building. So it's really hiding a lot of the beauty of that building. And so that's one thing. And then we see what happened with the Volios and the barber. I mean, that situation is ridiculous. The guy from Kohler that put that awning up there, I mean, he needs to go back to school because that should have never been allowed to be put up there. And I don't have anything going on with Charlie. He's never even cut my hair. But, you know, there's a good example of how the Historic Commission can do good work, you know, and somehow that slipped through the cracks. So, my comments for the night.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening again. Kate Waterman Culpa, 81 Milton. On behalf of the Historic Preservation Commission in the Village of Williamsville, I want to sincerely thank the mayor this evening for her complimentary comments at the last village board meeting. I want to refresh your memory what she said. If you have a home in the village and you want to do right by it and maintain the historic integrity, it would be good for you to go to a group of folks that offer that insight and knowledge and intellect on that particular issue. So thank you. Second, I'm taken aback by the comments tonight that the HPC should take a hiatus. No comments required, but my question is, should the other volunteer staff, decision-making boards, the planning board, and the ZBA also be placed on hiatus? Thank you.
Just to clarify that comment, because you're absolutely right, Ms. Waterman-Cole, I did state that, but you've taken it out of context. I believe the statement that I made after that was, and I've said this for the past 6 years I've been on this board, I feel that the HPC should be strictly an advisory board and not a decision-making board. So if you do have a historic home, thank you. If you do have a historic home and you're maybe at odds whether you should paint it dark green or dark blue, and you want to come to the experts for advice, I certainly welcome to have a group of volunteers, much as yourself, who are willing to serve the village and commit their knowledge base and time to help people who are misguided with what they should perhaps do or not do to their historic home. And but I do feel that it should purely be an advisory board and not a decision-making board. There is something called private property rights that we have in this country, and I think having a commission offers no value. We don't offer tax credits for properties that are deemed historic versus those that aren't. And for me, as a resident, I ask myself, then what's the point? If I don't get a tax credit or benefit, why should I be held to a different standard than somebody who lives on a street that isn't historic, like Pasadena or Los Robles or Pick a street in the village? So I just wanted to clarify that you're absolutely correct. I did make that comment, but it was out of context, and I just want to make sure everyone in this room knows where I stand on that issue.
I have more of my time left.
Sure.
So I would like to ask the board to educate themselves on zoning. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else who would like to comment?
I just have a very brief comment. I live in a Ray Herman, 114 Oak Grove. I was not going to comment, but I feel I must. I'm a little disturbed by the conduct I just witnessed. I think that was rather childish. We want a consensus when we're going to do an historic district. We want to make sure that people want this. I think that's the concern here, is that the chairperson just brought this up at a meeting and said, well, let's just do a historic district. I think tomorrow it's going to be A lot of people here are not happy. And so I think there has to be, it can be valuable, historic districts, but it has to be that the neighborhood wants it. And if they don't, it should not be imposed. So that's basically all I had to say. I do think there are some values to the having preservation. I've been in this village my whole life, and a lot of lovely buildings that we have to preserve. But it has to be a two-way street. We need consensus from the public also, not just top down. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if we value historic preservation and there's a situation and maybe a current makeup that not everybody can agrees with or is a little upset with, especially the people that may be in the crosshairs of certain things, is that then a reason to ditch on the whole process? Because to me, if you make it an advisory board, then historic pres has no teeth. And you don't want the decisions of historic preservation in the hands of the politicians, in the sole hands of the politicians, of the elected officials. You make an advisory committee, it's just that. Because then the electeds don't necessarily have to behold to that. This is all based on the certified local government thing that we became, that this village agreed to become. So, you know, it's like anything. You don't get your way in a certain election. So what then people want to start abolishing the process. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. It's a democracy. You input and you attend meetings and you come to a consensus. I completely agree. I can't agree more with that. You don't start talking abolishing the process because you're not getting your way. That's just not the way. It's not the way it should work. So.
Well, I think when a process is broken and isn't working in a way that is amenable with, in this case, a consensus, let's just say, okay. I think that people do start talking about abolishing those things that don't work.
Well,
so I'm just, for a second, I mean, the certified local government status was a status that a prior board had felt that it wanted to bring in or impose or, whatever language you feel is appropriate, because I wasn't on the board at that time.
Right,
but,
it was the same village, and more than 50% of the people haven't moved out, and then new people, and 50%.
I understand that, but people do change, and villages change, and the direction that changes. Main Street doesn't look like this even 10 years ago. Main Street didn't look the way it did. I mean, we've changed it with the picture Main Street, with the mix of businesses, the restaurants that have come in, the new breweries that have come in. 5 years ago, I mean, how many breweries were on Main Street? Now look how many they are.
Right.
So Village of Main Street has become more of a destination.
Oh, and I'm not, but you're talking about an individual case, and that's what's spawning all this dissolving of this,
No, I think there was a discussion of this 2 years ago when the South Cayuga District issue came up, and the Historic Preservation Commission was proposing that. And the village board said, well, let's ask the residents, the 40+ residents who live on South Cayuga, how they feel about it. And I believe that survey came back somewhere around the 80% of residents did not want to be part of a historic district. So,
right. So it worked. The process worked.
Well, it only worked because the board that sat here at this time listened to the constituents. But my point is that we are elected, and that should have been the outcome. If that wasn't the outcome, I would have been appalled to be seated up here, because our job is to listen to what the constituents want. But my point is, with HPC, many times that people aren't, unless there's a public hearing, they don't open it for public comment. They're not required to. And I guess the point is, and I think it's just being, if there are people who are willing to serve on a commission with expertise in the area of historic preservation, we should absolutely welcome that. But I think what people are saying is they're concerned about the the haste of this most recent discussion of the Mill Historic District and the fact that it seems to, and perception is reality, so it's being perceived that it's centered around the share certificate of appropriateness that they're seeking for the addition. Whether that's reality or not, perception is reality. So I think that is why you will probably see a lot of people coming to speak about the Mill Historic District tomorrow, because of the correlation of what's happening within that district.
And I do disagree with the fact that public participation or public comment is not necessarily allowed in those situations.
I do
Right.
too, and I
Because
think
they are essentially a governing board, just like us, and everybody should, that's how you build consensus.
Mhm.
Maybe on certain degrees of issues, but getting rid of it, starting to talk about getting rid of it, because things aren't going a certain way in the span of a couple years, that's a slippery slope.
But I don't think it's that so much. I think it's the way that certain, let's just say, members of the commission are treating the people who come in front of them. And, we did receive a letter from a family who recently came in front of HPC, and I watched the video of the way that they were treated, and it wasn't good.
Okay.
And I think that is intrinsic, like an issue, because we're a village. And if we want to welcome people into our village, we need to be welcoming no matter who sits up on this board, whether it's us or it's HBC or planning or zoning. And what I'm saying is there's never a situation where you need to be disrespectful to people. You can always agree to disagree. Basil Piazza was famous for saying that when he sat up here. And I do agree with that, but if you look at the way some of the members in particular on that commission have treated people who've come in front of them, it's appalling. It's absolutely appalling. And I just think as an elected board here, we should not tolerate that, nor should we want that as part of our image of what the Village of Williamsville is about.
When that's the case, and that's fine, that's how we have to address it. We have to have the proper conversations or whatever when it comes to those issues. But my concern is that because of that, there are people talking about the extreme and the other direction about just getting rid of it, eliminating it, and that's to me, that is not a good idea.
Well, for
we would be whittling away one more level of public participation, essentially. And and then you put it right in a 5-person board's lap without any true expertise. We have guidelines for the members of that commission. Are they always filled? No, because how many archaeologists are there?
One.
Right. So someone please go to school for archaeology and sign up for that commission.
But I think you're on the point that for somehow in order to be the Village of Williamsville, we need to continue to have a certified local government, which means we can also have an HPC. And what I would challenge is we can still be the Village of Williamsville without being a certified local government and without having a authoritarian historic preservation commission, as opposed to more of a advice or seeking, commission.
All right, this is
So
public
that's
participation.
Yeah. Well, we can also have, and we only allow people to come up once to the mic, so I apologize. Not my
Okay,
rules, board
enough
rules.
said.
So, okay,
Beware the slippery slopes.
okay.
I will say that this HPC, the latest issue that has riled up the area, people who were not at the meeting don't realize that we see many, many applications for certificates of appropriateness. And at the last meeting, share continued, but they passed 3 other approvals. One was an addition to a patio at the Eagle House. One was replacement windows at Tesori. And the other one was One-Eyed Brewers, the new brewery pub, wanted to put up a gazebo and a patio. And all those were approved. There was no reporting of that information. It was just that share went public and made it a very public issue. And it made it look like the village and the Historic Preservation Commission were really bad guys. And the truth is, they really aren't. They work very hard at preserving the history of this village. And we've lost a lot of history in the past. We'll probably lose some more in the future. But hopefully, we will retain most of it and we'll be proud of the fact that we are the historic village of Williamsville. We have a very strong commission who works very hard and very long hours and works, I mean, an amazing amount. But these people are appointed just like the planning board and just like the zoning board of appeals people. They are not answerable to this board. Once they're appointed, they are an independent board and an independent commission. And it's important for them to have that ability and not be ruled by the politics. I mean, I think that's what Dan was alluding to. When you start ruling by politics, that's when you get into some trouble. And that's when we end up having Williamsville look like Bendersonville. And I don't know if that's what you want, but I don't want a McDonald's in every storefront. And I don't want to see that. I like these small mom and pop businesses. And I think you'll be very happy when you see what Share comes back with in October. They have asked to be removed from the September meeting off the agenda because they are coming up with a new plan. And there's been some discussion about it. And they have an attorney who's working with them now. And I think everybody's going to be really pleased, including HBC, including Joel from Share, and including the village, and including the patrons who use Share. So, you know, don't jump to conclusions, and we need to work through this process. And that's all I ask is for a little bit of time, and have some faith in the village. These people work very hard, whether they're on the board, this board, the planning board, the zoning board, any of our volunteer committees. These are the people who are out slogging in the rain, putting together a new park in South Long Street, you know, to have that for our public. So give us a little patience. That's all I ask. Thank you.
And that is basically what I stressed last meeting, was the fact that, okay, the hang up between the Share design and the HPC was the certificate of appropriateness, it was the design.
Right.
So, you know, that's really all we can really weigh in opinion wise for along those lines. And I'm happy that that's what happened, because it's all about the compromise sometimes. And, you know, there's certain things that the HPC doesn't find appropriate as a board. And they went back and changed their design. It's a give and take and a push and pull.
Well,
And that's the first step, right? They're doing it. So the process is working.
Right.
It's just not taking. It's not an instant gratification, which everybody likes to get nowadays. And as soon as they, you know, start talking about dissolving processes, it's because of that. So anyway, I'm done. Off the soapbox.
So I'm Gina O'Neill, 79 Oak Grove Drive. To comment to what you said, Dan, with all due respect, I think the problem with the HPC as it was perceived to the public in relationship to Share was that they were overstepping. So I think that's what the big commotion was. It seemed like they were overstepping. And that's when people have a problem.
Exactly.
So
But that was all due to the media, and that was all due to the
I'm glad
press
the
and
media
going
was
public.
there.
Oh, no, I don't
Because-
disagree, but
Excuse me,
it seemed to
Dan.
have gone one way.
Excuse me? If the social media didn't happen, I wouldn't know. So I appreciate that, and I was able to have a voice. So I like the idea of the HPC doing things like making sure homeowners are taking care of their property. I live on Oak Grove, like I said, the house at the end of my street for decades was dilapidated. Nothing was done. We built our house, we had this beautiful house, all the houses are beautiful. I'm walking, I'm like, why isn't the town saying something about that? Why is that house left in disarray? So I see something some good with the HPC for that?
But that wasn't HPC. That was code enforcement.
Yeah.
building
Okay, well, they
department.
didn't do it, so maybe HPC. could use
No, it
some
had nothing to
of that.
do with it. They just finally got an investor to do it, and it was cited, and I believe, maybe a demo. Remember that top of Oak Grove, the
No.
Brown House? I don't
They
know.
fixed it up.
We,
Yeah,
yeah, but I think we
Yeah.
cited them on a few things.
We
that
did,
kind
we
of forced
cited
them.
them, and it was, I believe, there was like something with the owner not being.
Right.
Oh, lived in
I
Hawaii.
remember- Yeah, there was something, so, but finally they get fixed up.
To wrap it up, I think the problem was, it just seemed like HPC was overstepping when it came to share.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment? Before I close out? No? Okay, all right, so I'll make a motion to close suspension of rules for public participation.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, we'll get into reports and resolutions. Thank you for coming. Okay, so we'll get into reports and resolutions. I guess for my reports, I want to start off by thanking Congressman Brian Higgins for being one of the only politicians to speak out on getting the border, Canadian border, finally open for those who wanted to go back and forth. So it sounds like those regulations are all getting lifted as of October 1, and I think that's great, especially for this area, because I think we do get a lot of Canadian visitors here, and we certainly get a lot of them at the Galleria Mall. And with the holiday season coming, I think it's just great for, economic activity, and I welcome it. The second thing I wanted to report on, I think all of you saw, there was a resolution from the Erie County Association of Governments regarding a resolution that talked about the infringement of Second Amendment legal permitted owner rights. Did you all get a chance to see that in Association of Erie County Governments? Okay, so it's in your email, and I just wanted to bring it up, maybe take a look at it. I do plan on proposing a similar resolution at the October 11th meeting. I think that the recent changes that the governor has brought down regarding legal pistol permit holders is just ludicrous. And I think that the more people in Erie County, towns, villages, that can kind of speak out against that, I think it's important to do so. So I will be bringing that forth at our next meeting. So I'm just asking my board members to take a look at the existing one that's floating around with the Erie County Association. And if you have any questions on it, or you think you want to tweak anything, you can certainly reach out to me. And when I'm putting that together, we can work on it. And for resolutions, I would make a motion to approve resolutions number 1 and 2 and 3 as they appear on the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And resolution number 4 is regarding the LWRP. Resolved that the village administrator is hereby authorized to publish legal notice of a public hearing to be held by the Village Board of Trustees at 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday, October 11th, 2022 at Village Hall, 5565 Main Street, Williamsville, New York, for the purpose of hearing all persons interested in expressing an opinion on the approval of local law number 6 of 2022, local waterfront revitalization program final acceptance.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution number 5, resolved that Nicholas Wilcox of 6 Nictor Road, Lancaster, is hereby appointed as motor equipment operator in the Department of Public Works, effective September 27th, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the next one is regarding the video conferencing we discussed at work session. Resolved that the village administrator is hereby authorized to publish legal notice of a public hearing to be held by the Village Board of Trustees at 7:30 PM on Tuesday, October 11th, 2022 at Village Hall, 5565 Main Street, Williamsville, New York, for the purpose of hearing all persons interested in expressing an opinion on the proposed local law number 7 of 2022 on the open meetings law amendment for video conferencing procedures.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that's it for my reports and resolutions. Next for his reports and resolutions is Deputy Mayor Delano.
Thank you, Mayor. Just real quick, the tree board is on the verge of finalizing the plan for the fall planting, which essentially a combination of the spring, last spring's planting that didn't happen due to weather and I guess manpower, and the digging, the weather changed on us, and it was probably a good thing they didn't go on the street because it was very dry summer. So we'll be putting in somewhere between 80 and 85 trees. You'll see most of the work on Main and Mill, or Main Street, Mill Street, North Cayuga, Gordon, Belmont, and that area, like the north central part of the village. And that's it. That's it for my reports and resolutions.
Okay, thank you. Next for her reports and resolutions is Trustee Hunt.
Just was able to sit in on the Environmental Advisory Council meeting last week, and they are making plans for Earth Day 2023. Lots of excitement going on there, and a potential green up day, April 22nd, which is Earth Day in the village. It sounds like a pretty good idea, very exciting program that they're in the infancy stages of planning. And they have are trying to organize the roles and responsibilities for the climate smart communities process, and that is ongoing. And they shouldn't have something by next month, something more concrete in place. Ben, did Jane reach out to you at all? She was going to see if, okay.
I have not heard from Jane in quite some time.
Okay. I'm sure she will, once they figure out who's gonna do what, to see if, where and when they can get records, like it would be from you or Judy. So, just so you know, when they get back down to that, when they start to get that organized, they'll be reaching out for whatever they need. And that's it, nothing else, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next for her reports and resolutions is Trustee Lothar.
Thank you, Mayor. As alluded to earlier, there will be a public hearing tomorrow night for the HPC on the Mill District, Historic District, and it will start at 6 p.m. It'll be followed at 7 p.m. by the regular HPC meeting. The Meeting House Committee met this last week, and I was there. And for September, they had 17 bookings. They've already got 14 for October, 11 for November, and 12 for December. So they're getting bookings, they're doing a good job. And if you get a chance, they have a play that's starting next week, Brighton Beach Memoirs. If you're interested, try some small theater here in the village, it's fun. And I was also told that October 8th is the fire department open house. I think that that's really a nice event they put on every year, and I would hope that it's well attended. And I also wanted to note the passing of Bill Grady. Bill was a fireman for the Hutchinson Hose for probably a good 50 years. I think he even did, on the side, he did some fire inspection for the village many years ago. But he was a very lifelong, hardworking fireman, and I knew him quite well. And he'll be sadly missed. So I just wanted to let you know about that passing. I do have one resolution this evening. Resolved that the proposal from Flynn Battaglia Architects dated September 8th, 2022, to continue the phased rehabilitation work of the asbestos abatement project at the Lehigh Valley Section House Building at a cost of $13,200, plus the cost of hazard material project and air monitoring through Stoll Environmental. The mayor is hereby authorized and directed to execute said proposal on behalf of the village of Williamsville.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Torrey is absent this evening. Are there any staff reports? And we will be going back into work session.
I saw the meeting house set today.
I beg your pardon?
The set in the meeting house for the play this week is incredible. The work that they did,
Okay,
it's
good.
worth just seeing how much effort they put into making the set look the way it does, so.
Yeah, they hadn't started on it last week.
I saw the lights on, so I stopped in and Doug was in there doing with a little brush, touch-up paint
Okay,
on everything.
great. They're doing a good job.
Okay, anything else from staff? Okay, so, we have nothing for executive session, so I'll make a motion to adjourn the regular meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And I'm just gonna request that we finish out department head reports in here rather than going across the hall. It'll take us this long to get across the halls that we'll just